So I'm Abhinav Prakash from Christ Deemed to be University, and I've been selected as the campus director for this Millennium Fellow season. And I'm working for SDG number one, goal number one, that's no poverty, and goal number two, that's no hunger. So I've been working for this, and you guys can introduce yourself through the chat box, mention your name, the university you're from, and the country you're from. And if you want to, you can also unmute yourself and switch on your video and introduce yourself. I see a lot of responses coming in the chat box. Hello, Mrinal Rinaya from Kerala. I see Alabi from Iron College of Health Sciences, Nigeria. Guys, if anyone is interested in introducing yourself, you can unmute and go ahead. I see a lot of responses coming in. Hi, Joseph Dolo from American Methodist Episcopal University, Liberia. A lot of responses coming in. Hello, everyone. Yeah, from university, from Nigeria, from different countries. We have Busil also from Nepal. Simbia Tibiola from Bayero University, Kano, Nigeria. Tanisha from Jai Hind College, Mumbai, India. Abu Rahab from Bangladesh University of Professionals. Tanisha Kulkarni, would you like to switch on your video and give a small introduction of yourself, if it's okay with you? Yeah, I see Godwin. You can introduce yourself. And also Karian, you can also introduce yourself, unmute yourself and introduce. Responses are still coming in. A lot of responses. Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
Okay, hi, good evening.
I think Godwin has muted himself. There are many responses coming in. Okay. So let's start with the introduction. So our speaker for today is Ambassador Delisi. Let me introduce him to you. Ambassador Scott Delisi has dedicated himself to a life of services. He has served as Ambassador of United States to the Republic of Uganda, Ambassador to Federal Democratic Republic of Nepal, and as Ambassador to the State of Eritrea and Botswana. He also served as Deputy Chief of Mission of the American Embassy in Gaborone, Botswana, as well as Director of Career Development and Assignments in the State Department's Bureau of Human Resources, and as Director for Entry-Level Programs in the same bureau. Today, he's honored to serve as the Executive Director of Engage Nepal and Sourway Foundation. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for making time to connect with Millennium Fellows. We are truly honored and grateful. Now I pass on the stage to the speaker, to the Ambassador, to introduce himself.
Thank you very much, Abhinav, and what a great pleasure it is to be with all of you today. You know, it really is amazing when we look at what we're doing here. It just astounds me. You know, we look at this tremendously diverse group of young people who are reaching out and engaging with each other and with me and with the whole MCN team from across the world. And the technology that allows us to do this, it is such a blessing to be able to have this kind of opportunity. You know, years ago, we didn't do this sort of thing. And when I was an ambassador, I will tell you that I was one of the first ambassadors to use Facebook, right? And this became an opportunity for us to begin to engage young people in a totally different way. And it was fascinating to see what happened as we reached out and as we engaged and as we talked to each other, and to see the power of just sitting together, of talking with each other about listening to each other's perspective without being prescriptive about what we should do. And it reminded me about how incredibly important it was that we engage with young people across the world. In the countries in which I served, in Nepal, when I was ambassador there, 70% of the population was youthful, was under the age of 40. In Uganda, half the population was under the age of 15, and 1 out of every 3 Ugandans was under the age of 10. And we began to recognize that if we as diplomats, if we weren't engaging young people on the problems that they faced and the problems of the future that we all confront, we were missing the boat. If what we were doing was not relevant to the young people who made up 70% or more of the population of that country, then why were we there? So we had to find a way to bridge that gap and to begin to talk to each other. And tools like this, tools like Facebook, these all allowed us to begin to do things very differently and to think about diplomacy differently and to think about problem solving with the global issues that we face differently. And that's why the chance to engage with all of you. And first of all, let me just say to you, congratulations. The fact that you have been chosen to be fellows is truly a singular honor. And I hope you all know that. I hope you understand how important this is. I was really struck. I was looking at some of the numbers that were offered to me. 30,000 people wanted this opportunity. 30,000 from 2,000 campuses across the globe. 200 of you, I think, were chosen, right? That is an incredible honor. It makes, listen, when I joined the Foreign Service, when I took the exam for the Foreign Service, when I started out the day that I took the exam, 20,000 of us took the examination across the United States, and ultimately about 200 of us got in. Our percentage was higher than your percentage of fellows who were accepted. So what you have done is really incredible, the fact that you have been accepted. So thank you. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your willingness to engage. Thank you for your willingness to commit yourself to looking at the problems that we face as a global community and asking, how can I make a difference? And while I'm thanking people, you know, we have to thank the Millennium Campus Network. I've known Sam for some years now, and I've met the rest of the team as we've gone along. And I'm so tremendously impressed and so grateful that we've got an organization like MCN that is striving to make this kind of a difference and to provide the opportunity that they are to the fellows and to work in partnership with the United Nations and the United Nations academic impact. It matters so very, very much. And I only wish that when I had been ambassador, I had a group like this to work with, but we found other groups and we built other partnerships in the countries in which I served. And that in itself was great. But I guess one of the things that I'd want to say to all of you, or that I will say to all of you, is it's great that we're engaging young people, and it's great that we want young people to be involved, right? We want your energy. We want your passion and your creativity. And you think about things differently, and you understand technology in a way that my generation doesn't, and you use it in ways that can be truly transformative. There's 100 reasons why getting young people engaged is so incredibly important. But I don't want this to be just about engaging you as young people, because you aren't always going to be young. You're going to get old, like me. One of these days, you're going to wake up and say, holy cow, how did this happen? But what I want you to know is that passion doesn't have an expiration date. Commitment doesn't just go away. Engagement doesn't disappear unless you let it, unless you choose for it to disappear. And that's one of the lessons that I've learned over the years. And I hope that you will learn this too, because I'm delighted that as young people, you are already beginning this journey of commitment and engagement and problem solving. But I hope that what we are doing as we work with you over the years is that when you are 70 years old, you're still going to be as engaged and as committed. And that throughout your lifetime, you will bring that same passion and commitment and engagement, because these are things that we will need from you and from all of us across the span of a lifetime. And I know you're looking at some of the truly compelling issues that we face as a global community today. And I applaud that. And I hope you make tremendous progress. I hope that we collectively can make tremendous progress in addressing those goals. But I got to tell you, it's not going to get any easier. The problems that we face as a global community are only going to become more complex as we go forward. Just look at the challenges being posed by climate change. This existential threat to our future as a planet. It's going to change the way we think about so many things, and even the issues that you are looking at today are being affected by the impact of climate change. And we've got to be constantly rethinking, reevaluating, reassessing how do we best tackle the problems? What are the root causes? Where do we go as we move forward? And the problems are only going to become more complex. We're going to be, the technology that allows us to do all this great stuff in today's world is fantastic. But with new technology comes new challenges as well. And as we move forward and as we see all these technological changes and changes in the world of biotechnology, changes in how we manage data, how we do just so much, we're going to be faced again as a global community with some very challenging ethical and moral questions as well about how we use all that science is offering us and who gets to use it and how we share it and what we're going to do together. And that requires great thought and great care. And this is what you are going to be facing throughout your lifetime. And you're going to see the world continue to change. And if you think the world has changed fast, I mean, my grandkids are just blown away when they talk to me. They realize that I grew up and I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have a computer. That I grew up when I was young. There was no color TV. They're just, they're amazed. The fact that I had to get up and turn a channel on the TV because there were no remote controls. This is beyond their understanding, right? So in my lifetime, I've seen the world change very dramatically. But in your lifetimes, the pace of change is only accelerating. And it's going so rapidly. And there are so many new innovations and new ideas and new issues that are going to be thrown at you. And before you have a chance to even absorb them, at least in my generation, we usually had a decade or so to adapt to the next big thing before another one came along. Now it's every other month. You've got a new big thing coming along that challenges us to think differently about the world. And this is what you're going to need. Not only that commitment and not only that engagement and that passion, but the ability to adapt, to be flexible, to deal with change, because change is going to be the hallmark of your lives. And how you manage these things, how you manage that future is going to matter. And as you think about these things, the issue of leadership becomes ever more important. And I'm not talking just about leadership at, well, when you're old, and you get to be an ambassador, or you're the president of your country, or you're whatever you're going to be. Leadership isn't just confined to having a big stage on which to act. We lead within our families. We lead within our communities. We lead on our campuses. We lead in the workplace, wherever it may be. And whatever your position, you don't have to be the CEO. You don't have to be the president of the organization to lead. But your leadership is so vital. The fact that you are conscious of how you are projecting your values, your vision of the world that you seek to create, that we seek to create, that you understand why being involved matters. And as you lead, that you lead with an understanding of your moral compass, if you will. Yeah, I think the term that I think Sam and others like to talk a lot, and I agree with them, about ethical leadership. And it really is, it's so incredibly important that we all know for ourselves where our values lie and where our moral compass does point us. And that is reflected in the choices that we make as leaders. There are times where your choices may not be popular, they may not be well received, they may not always be universally shared, but if you are true to the values you believe in, and I can't tell you what those values are supposed to be, you've got to figure that out. And all of us are going to define this a little bit differently, and that's what I learned as an ambassador, that we all understood our oath of office a little bit differently, but we needed to understand it, because that commitment to a set of values had to guide us and shape us. And if it isn't there, that leadership becomes rootless, it becomes unfocused. You can't inspire if you don't know what you believe in. And I found that when I knew why I served, when I knew why the work we did mattered, from my values framework as well as our foreign policy framework, I could tell a story that resonated and that mattered to people. But if I didn't know, then we got lost. So as an example, I will tell you, so a lot of the work we did in Uganda was very much focused on the fight against HIV/AIDS, right? The PEPFAR program, the President Bush initiated, and that has been carried on from administration to administration, this commitment of the United States to help fight a global pandemic that threatened the existence of a generation, right? In Africa, we saw countless people dying. We committed ourselves to making a difference. But my team in Uganda, I remember one day they'd come into me and they'd say, "Oh, Ambassador, we're so excited. We've reached a milestone. We've reached a big goal. 80% of people living with HIV/AIDS are now on treatment." And this was very important. Don't get me wrong. But I looked at them and I said, that's great. I'm really thrilled. But when you tell me 80%, I said, yeah, that's a number. That's a good number. I'm really glad we got to that number. But what does that mean to the average Ugandan? If you say, oh, 80% of people living with AIDS are on treatment, what does it mean? What really matters, and I looked at my team and I said, can you go out and tell the average Ugandan why the United States cares if someone dies from HIV/AIDS in Uganda? Why are we committed to this effort? Why are we striving to make this difference in the world? And if we can tell that story, why we care, what the values are that drive us to say we're going to fight this pandemic and help people in countries around the world, that's where we begin to communicate. And that's where we begin to build the bridges. And that's where we begin to define ourselves. So as you may have noticed by now, this is kind of somewhat stream of consciousness. These are things that are very much on my mind that I'm talking about all the time. It's about leadership, it's about values, it's about vision, it's about telling your story. It's about knowing your narrative. And you never know where life is going to take you, right? And how this is all going to play out. I was asked if I'd say a few words about my career as a diplomat and how this all came about. And if I do that, and I will do it, but I will tell you, so the underlying theme in all of this then has to be the power of the serendipitous. Now, I don't know how all of you came to be here today. I don't know how you learned about the Millennium Fellowship Program, how you made that decision to pursue this endeavor. But for me, I ended up pursuing my endeavor with the State Department through the most serendipitous of routes. I had quit school when I first started at the university because it was the tail end of the Vietnam War era. Campuses were unsettled. I wasn't entirely sure why I wanted to be there. So I left and I worked for a few years and I traveled. And I traveled to Europe and I suddenly saw that there was a bigger world out there and it intrigued me. I thought I want to be part of it. Went back to school. I ended up studying diplomatic history because I had a professor who was great. He made diplomatic history come alive. He was a good storyteller. It's all about the story. And I thought, how do you get to be a diplomat? But this was in the late 1970s. This was before there was an Alexa or a Siri or Hey Google. And I couldn't just turn to them and ask them, how do you get to be a diplomat? How do you join the State Department? And it didn't occur to me, or I was too lazy, I'm not sure which, to go to the library and try to research all of this. So as a result, I kind of let it go. I thought, oh, you must have to know somebody. You must have to be connected. Life went on. I ended up going to law school because it seemed like a good idea at the time. I didn't really want to be a lawyer, but needed to do something for a while. While I was in law school, one day a guy handed me a Wall Street Journal, told me there was a great article in the journal. I said, cool. Flipped through I read the article, don't remember what it was, but I did flip through to the want ads because I wanted to see what lawyers were doing in the real world, because I figured sooner or later I've got to get a job, I've got to do something. There was an announcement, an ad this big, said U.S. Department of State announces the examination for the Foreign Service. And I said, oh, you take a test? Heck, I do tests. I got in just under the deadline. 35 years later, you're saying, boy, that was quite a ride. And it was. You never know where life is going to take you. And this is my point is, every day in our lives, we are given opportunities. There are things that come along. And there is tremendous power in pursuing what I would call the serendipitous in life. But you've got to be open to it. You've got to be able to see it. You've got to be willing to take the chance and see where life will take you. Now, I think we had talked about making this more of a question and answer session, and I think we're just about the time where we should do that. So I'm going to kick it back over to our moderator because I'd much rather know what you're interested in and try to answer your questions than just ramble on. So,
thank
we
you
go to questions?
Yeah, a lot of questions. I think you guys can start putting in your questions in the chat box. Thank you, Ambassador, for all the insightful words that you shared with us in the last 10 or 20 minutes. And I think let me start with a question that most of us have in our minds. Like, what are the steps did you take as an undergraduate to position yourself in a position to be able to get into a career of international diplomacy? What are the steps that you took?
To be honest, I really didn't, because I wasn't that clear where my future was going to take me. And, what do they say? They say man plans and God laughs, right? I mean, we can lay out all the plans. We can do everything that the professors tell us. We can read every book. We can set ourselves on a course. But life has a way of taking us where we need to be. And I'm not saying that, so I just float through it all. Guys, don't worry, don't prepare. Of course, you do your best to plan and to make your dreams a reality. And if you know that you desire to work in the international realm, for example, sure, you focus yourself in terms of your reading, the courses that you take, the people that you seek out, the questions that you ask, the engagement that you have. And again, in today's world, there are so many more opportunities for you to do that than there were when I was a young man, because there's countless programs and webinars and all sorts of things you can drop in on to learn and to get perspectives. I didn't have that. I didn't know for sure where I was going to go. I did have a personal interest in these issues, in the issues of global affairs, international relations, the complexity of the world that we lived in. And so my studies inevitably took me in that direction, but it wasn't with a clearly defined plan of attack, if you will, for how to prepare for that future. I guess what I'd say to you, the important thing is follow those things right now. Know what you're passionate about. Try to find those things that really inspire you, that intrigue you, that engage you intellectually, that make you wonder, that make you mad, that frustrate you, just find the things that really resonate and follow the path and see where it's going to lead you. It's best I can tell you, because there is no Bible on any of this.
Thank you for that answer. And Abigail Abimesfin, I think a question has come. You can unmute yourself, switch on your video, and ask the question to the ambassador. I think there's a problem. So I'll read out the question to you, Ambassador.
Okay.
How can the youth catch up with the very fastly changing world? How do we learn to navigate through the accelerating change around? What are the constants we should hold on to?
What was the last part?
What are the constants we should hold on to?
Really, well, it goes to what I was saying earlier. I don't know how we navigate all of this. I know that I am constantly challenged to keep up. And it becomes even harder because not only are the issues complex and interrelated, and you start following one and it leads you to another and another, and pretty soon you've gone down this rabbit hole of problems that you're trying to where do you begin? How do we tackle it? And each component of that problem set that you begin to look at, there's so much information out there today that we can tap into and read about and try to understand that it can be overwhelming. So I would say to you, first of all, really understand that you can't do everything in these, although the problems are connected and they're complex, find a component of it that you can get your hands around. And that's where you begin. And be judicious and selective in your reading, because again, there's just so much and it does overwhelm you. As I'm doing some lecturing these days, and as I try to prepare lectures on these topics, it is honing my thoughts and knowing what it is that I really want to focus on. That becomes a great challenge at times. But don't let yourself become so overwhelmed or so distracted by so much information that you end up being broken into 20,000 pieces and you can't really focus and deliver, right? Now, how do you really hone your thinking on this? How do you narrow that focus? How do you put together that path of action that will lead to something concrete? That's the challenge. And again, I wish I had this wonderful pat answer to tell you this is exactly how you do it. But there isn't one. You've got to be conscious of the fact that you can lose that focus real easily, that you can be overwhelmed. And if you feel overwhelmed, step back and again, narrow that focus. Know what you want to do and hone in. And I would say to you at the beginning, you're better off. Yeah, the problems are really big in scope, but take a piece. Take that one piece and just stay with it. until you feel comfortable with it, until you make that your own, and then you build on another piece and another piece. It's like building a career in some ways too, though. When I joined the State Department, that was overwhelming. You know, they are giving you it's like trying to drink from the fire hose, right? This tremendous array of information is coming at you. Take it a step at a time. Learn a piece and then another piece. And each piece that I learned, each job that I'd had in the State Department, I'd say at the beginning, holy God, I have no idea how to do this. And I didn't. But I focused on the specific job. And over the course of my tour, I learned and I grew. By the end of a couple of years, I said, I've got this. I know this. And then they'd give me a new assignment and I'd have to start all over again. And I thought, holy good God, all right, I figured out how to do this last one, but now I have no clue about how to proceed. But once again, you start at the beginning. You take those baby steps. You learn, you master it. And by the end of that, to the next tour, you say, I got this one too. And that happened again and again and again over the course of my career, until suddenly they said to me, all right, you're going to be an ambassador now. And I thought, well, what do I know about being ambassador? And then I said, wait a minute. Yeah, I've been doing this for 20 years or whatever it was. And each one of those assignments had given me a set of skills. And suddenly all those skill sets came together. And I said, you know what? I do know how to do this. I've been able to develop these skills over time. And each one of these tools in my toolkit is useful to me in my new role. And I took it and I built upon it. And that's what you do when you're looking at all these problems too, and all this rapid change. Fine, take it a step at a time. Get hold of something, master it, move on, build upon it, build out upon it. And all those tools, as you build upon it, the world may be changing, but the foundational things that you do now will prepare you for the work in the future. So do the foundational stuff, get those roots. The work that the problem sets you're going to deal with in 10 years are going to look really different than what you're doing right now. But the mere intellectual exercise that you will go through in tackling a challenge, whether it's poverty, access to clean drinking water, access to healthcare, employment, all of these things. As you address these issues, as you think about the problem that you've chosen to focus on as a fellow, that process that you follow will give you a set of skills that will serve you well when you tackle the next problem and the next problem and the next problem, because there's going to be all those next problems, because it's all going to keep changing on you.
Thanks for that answer. I think we have hands raised up. Ashinze, if you could go forward, introduce yourself and ask your question.
Okay. Hello, please. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, please?
Yeah, you're audible. You can go.
Okay. So my question is as follows. I believe the making changes and impacting is really important. And what if you kind of come from a place where not just your location, but the culture, the beliefs, and even the ethics here, right? I mean, trying to position yourself in a kind of place that you can get access to these opportunities comes with a lot of things attached, and this is just like an automatic setback for you. How do you deal with those things? How do you deal with some cultural, some religious, and some ethnical background, some setbacks based on where you come from? So I'm Ashinze Emmanuel. I'm chemical engineering undergraduate from the University of Lagos and data scientist, and I work on Project Pujua, which is just to bridge the energy gap and the educational gap in educationally disadvantaged areas. So that's my question. How do you deal with a situation where you have impact, you want to make impact, but you are limited with where you are coming from, your location technically?
I got some of the question. I was having trouble hearing some of that. Abhinav, did you get it clearly?
Yes, sir. He is asking about the setbacks. How did you deal with the setbacks that you had?
Okay. Yeah, there are constantly setbacks. I mean, but it doesn't matter. you keep on trying. I mean, that's the bottom line. And I mean, that may sound really simplistic, but you're never going to solve every problem. You're never going to solve it as completely, as robustly as you'd like. But I would, I think back on the work that we did both, in our embassies, but I think of the work that I do at Engage in Nepal now as well, as a social entrepreneur. I'm not going to solve all the problems faced by women in Nepal, or every problem that a vulnerable kid faces, or the girls who are being trafficked, or whatever it may be. But you got to keep on going. You keep on trying, and I may not solve every problem, but I'm going to solve a problem. You may not touch every life, but I'm going to touch some lives. And I would remind my team, as they'd get frustrated with, as we'd have a challenge with the government in Uganda, or we'd have a disagreement on fundamental values. And they say, what's the point? Why should I keep on going? This is too much. These problems are overwhelming. But I'd remind them, but today, setting aside all this other crap, today we saved a life. We saved the life of a mother giving birth to a child because of programs that we did. We saved the life of somebody who's suffering from HIV/AIDS. We saved the life of a child who was severely malnourished, and we changed their future. And man, you saved a life. I didn't solve all the problems, but we saved a life. How powerful is that? And each time that you touch a life, that you give someone hope, you address a small part of that problem, it matters. It does make a difference. And all I know is that even if there are setbacks, we've got to keep trying, because if we don't try, nothing happens if we do not try. We may not always succeed. That's okay. But if we don't try, it's a guarantee that nothing's going to happen. It's a guarantee that nothing is going to change. And if enough of us globally, if enough of us are working at problems, little by little, we are making a difference. And the cumulative effect truly, truly matters. And that's what you've got to keep in mind. I think one of the biggest frustrations, especially perhaps for young people, is that you aren't heard, that your voices aren't heard, which is one of the reasons, again, why I think the Millennium Campus Network program, that this is such a tremendous opportunity. Certainly one of the frustrations that I heard from young people in Nepal and young people in Uganda was, we aren't heard. And in fact, we saw governments that viewed young people as a force to be feared rather than a resource to be nurtured and to be encouraged. And that's unfortunate. So as you're beginning in particular, you'll come across a lot of old folks like me who don't want to hear from you, who discount what you have to say because you're young. What do you know? Keep on trying anyway. Open your mouth again and again. Share your views. Get people to think. And for everyone who dismisses it or doesn't listen, you'll find one along the way who will, and will take your idea and work with you and build with you. And there's so much potential for partnership and growth and for having an impact. And even though you may not think the impact is going to be great, it matters. And it's often greater than you think. I saw Peace Corps volunteers who often would be frustrated, and they'd leave the village in which they had worked, and they felt they had such a small slice of a big problem. And they'd spent a couple of years working on it, and they left and thought, I don't know that this mattered. I don't know that at the end of the day, did this really make a difference? Well, I'm going to tell you, it did. And I would see the impact later when people from their village would come up to me, or somebody in the government would come up to me and tell me about the Peace Corps volunteer that they had worked with 20 years before, and the impact that they had had on their life, just the example that they had set. And the example that you all set when you remain engaged and committed and persevere despite the problems, despite the challenges. You don't know who you're inspiring. You don't know what impact that is going to have down the road, but I promise you, it will have an impact. It does matter. And I've seen that play out again and again and again. And it's gratifying to know that, boy, that did matter, even though you don't feel it at the time. And I've seen that true in my own work and in the work of others. And I think it'll be true in your lives as well.
Thank you for that answer, Ambassador. And I see Laishram Yashmini, your hand raised up. You can introduce yourself and ask the question to the Ambassador.
Hello, this is Yashmin Laishram, and I'm a second year undergraduate student at the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, IIS Tirupati. And I have some questions for today. My first question is, what is your advice to any student who is interested in being a diplomat as a career? And my second question is, how did you find diplomat as a career? And my third question
I'm sorry,
is,
what could you repeat that second question?
My second question is, how did you find being a diplomat as a career?
Oh, okay.
And my third question is, do you think that diplomats of a certain country are given independent choices while taking a choice of their plans and actions of the foreign policies they would be taking for the country, or they are given certain places by the central government or by the state? And my fourth question is, suppose if I want to join the field of international relations, which one do you think it is better? The first one is joining the UN as an official and contributing to the international relations. And the other one is being a diplomat of a country and coming to UN after being a diplomat of a country. So that's
that's quite an array. That's quite an array of questions. So let me, and I could go on for a long time about that, and I'll try not to. But let me just a couple of things. As I mentioned to you, I almost fell into diplomacy as a career, right? This was not something I had planned on when I was a young man saying, oh, I'm going to grow up and be a diplomat and go serve my country and be an ambassador and do all this cool stuff. So I kind of wandered into it because life took me in a certain direction. And I said, fine, I'll take that test. Why not? What the heck? Let's see what happens. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. And again, this is where being open to the serendipitous in our life, following a course can be important. But so I took that choice. I took that path. I cannot tell you how, for me, I could not have found a better opportunity to live my best life, I guess, in some ways, I would say. It was a tremendously good fit for me. But what I found was, first of all, I had the opportunity to learn every single day for the 35 years that I served full-time for the State Department. It's still true today, but every day for those 35 years, I was given the opportunity to grow, to get smarter, to learn something new, to think about the world differently, to think about policy differently, to see new policy challenges, and to have my assumptions challenged every day. And having your assumptions challenged is an important thing. And suddenly you look and say, well, I always thought that the answer to this problem of poverty, if only we would do this, but suddenly you find that there's a very different reality on the ground in country X or country Y that you have to take into account. And it expands your mind, expands your thinking, and you grow. And the opportunity to grow and to learn was, for me, this tremendous blessing. And coupled with that was this chance as a career diplomat. I had that chance to shift gears every 3 or 4 years, right? We would get a new assignment. We'd go on to something new and different. And each time you had to rethink and again, test your theories or learn about a new problem set. So there was this constant opportunity to grow and follow new directions, but do it while working within the comfort of a structure that you were familiar with and where you knew you were going to have a paycheck and you knew you had insurance for your health and all these other good things. And that's not something to ignore. So that was all wonderful. So to grow, to work, to travel, to experience the world, to work with this tremendously diverse array of colleagues, both within the countries in which I served, within our embassies, diplomats from other nations, man, that was so rewarding and so enriching. So yeah, for me, it was a great choice. We all make our choices. There are many other paths that are also as rich and as robust, but for me, I found one that really worked for me. You asked about the independence, about your ability as a diplomat to shape policy. I'm always told, of course, and in today's world, it's tougher. Years ago, a diplomat would go off and it would take a month to send a communication back to your national capital, right? And then suddenly you could send cables, messages went faster. Now we've got instant messaging, we've got emails, we got everything. So suddenly now the world is smaller and your capital is always looking over your shoulder, or has the potential to look over your shoulder constantly in a way that they didn't before. And they don't need you to tell them what's going on because they've got CNN or they've got Fox, or they've got all these big news networks that are already providing the news that, oh, there was a bombing in the Capitol today. They've got that news back in Washington before I can even write it in an email. So that role has changed. But while they say policy is made in Washington and we implement it in the field, I was deeply gratified to learn, and as an ambassador, I learned I had a tremendous impact, both on the policy that was made back in Washington, because I was the guy on the ground. My team, we were the ones that were supposed to be the experts, and Washington wasn't following day in and day out what was going on in Nepal or Uganda or Eritrea or Botswana or anywhere else. They'll focus on the real hot issue. If there's a crisis with Iran, they're going to micromanage that in Washington. They're going to micromanage maybe something that's going on, the conflict in the Middle East or what have you. But the vast majority of countries, we had tremendous abilities to both influence the policies in Washington and to actually just kind of shape it on the ground through our actions, through the way we spoke, the way we engaged. We had to translate what the president's views were and find a way to communicate it effectively in the host nation. So I found that my ability to be a robust actor in policy formulation as well as implementation was much greater than I would have expected. The choice between working as a diplomat as in a bilateral sense, as representing a country, or pursuing the multilateral or the international organization route, I would say to you, in part, the best choice is whichever one you can get into, because there's no guarantee you're going to get into any of them, right? I mean, these are highly competitive undertakings. If you are successful and if you are offered both, well, wow, then you are A, very lucky, and B, you are faced with a difficult choice. And there you've got to just ask yourself, what feels right to me? Go with your gut. Time and again, I have learned, no matter what people will tell you, now you'll get all sorts of advice and people will tell you what the conventional wisdom is, you should do X or Y or Z. That's useful. It's useful to know what most people would do and take that into account. But do what your heart tells you to do. You will regret it if you don't. And I have never, there were times when I made decisions in terms of how to handle an issue that I wasn't convinced in my heart we're the right way, but my team or others would say, no, that really, we should try this. And I'd say, okay, we'll do it. And I always ended up regretting it. I truly believe you've got to trust your instincts. And again, this comes back to trusting in your values, because your instincts hopefully are going to be shaped by what you believe in. And this to me is the most important thing for every one of you. Please ask yourselves why you are doing this. Why did you choose to be Millennium Fellows? Why are you serving? What is it that matters to you? And I hope it's not just because it'll look good on your resume. I hope it's because you bring commitment to something. You want to change the world. You want to have an impact. You believe that it matters, just as I believed that it mattered, that people's voices were heard, that we treated people, that we respected the fundamental human dignity of all individuals with whom we engaged, that we felt that people should be able to be part of their societies and help to shape their futures, that respecting fundamental rights mattered, and that the world needs to be structured not just on who's got the most power, but what's the right thing to do. I believe this stuff. I sound old-fashioned sometimes when I say that. I know that the previous administration probably would have laughed at me. I would have been one of the guys that probably didn't last long under the previous administration. But these things matter in life. And this is what your legacy will be at the end of the day. And when my grandkids look at me, I don't want, it doesn't matter whether they say, oh, my grandpa was an ambassador, my grandpa was this or that. But my grandpa cared about the world. He engaged. He made a difference. He cared about people. He had an impact on people's lives. That's the legacy that you seek to create. That's the legacy that you have, that's the path that you are all on. It's the opportunity that you will have. And I hope it's an opportunity that will become fundamental to who you are. And I would just say that when I joined the State Department, I didn't join with the idea of, oh, I'm going to serve, I'm going to go have an impact on the world or anything else. I didn't want to be a lawyer. I needed a job and I was running out of schools to go to. So it seemed like a pretty damn good idea at the time when the State Department offered me a position. But I quickly learned that it was about service, that it was about engagement. It was about the values that I believed in. That's what gave substance and meaning to the work that I did. And so fast forward, 40 years later, here I am leading a small nonprofit, trying to make a difference still, because engagement, as I said at the beginning, it doesn't expire with age. Passion doesn't expire with age. And that I came to learn that serving, having the heart of a servant, being engaged, making a difference, touching someone's life for the better, that gives tremendous meaning to your own life. That's what made it all worthwhile. And I hope that that's the journey that each of you is on. So I hope that helped answer a few of your four-part question as best I could. I'm willing to stick around for a few more minutes if there are other questions.
Yeah, there are many other questions, Ambassador. I think if anyone wants to depart and if they're busy enough, they could go or leave the meeting, and people who want to ask their questions, you can stay in the meeting. And I think before going into the next question, I have a statement from a person here in the comment box. I would like to highlight that from Moses. And he says, we, the youth of Africa, are being suppressed by a government. We want to make a great impact in our country and the world, but we have been stopped by governmental suppression. We won't stop because our minds are fixed to making an impact and creating opportunity for others. And I think that's a real good statement, Ambassador.
I think that is a tremendous statement. And that was I will tell you, that was the feeling that I had, the young men and women that we engaged with in Uganda. And I will tell you that work that we did with youth was one of the most powerful things that I felt that I did as an ambassador in my last decade or so in the Foreign Service. And it was important, as I said earlier, because they made up most of the population and we had to be relevant. But those young people that I engaged with inspired me as well. They changed my mindset. They reaffirmed my commitment and the importance of this sort of engagement. And sitting with these young people who were discouraged. I mean, the government did not want to hear from them, and the government sought to block them. And to know that they were determined to move forward in any event. This was leadership. And I was so inspired and so impressed and so grateful to have the chance to work with them. And I know that the next time I go to Uganda, then it's been, I've often said, if I went back to Uganda, say a decade after I completed my service, and we're moving towards that, I would find these same young people. I know that they will still be engaged. They will be leaders. They will be leaders in business. They will be leaders in society, in their faith communities. They will be leaders, I hope, in government ultimately, because they were committed to making a difference. And again, you don't have to be the president to lead. You can lead in many, many ways. I just noted that I'm just noticing now the mask that's hanging on the plant stand behind me. I've got a gorilla looking over my shoulder, I just realized, but I hope that hasn't been too distracting for all of you. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, we'll move on to the next question. I would invite Marvel Zhu to unmute, introduce yourself and ask a question to the ambassador.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're audible. You can go.
Okay, great. My name is Marvel Joel. I go to the Ohio State University and I'm a student in public policy. Hearing your story was really inspirational and great. And as someone who is interested in law school, ambassadorship, and policy and governmental affairs, what would you recommend to be able to get involved with more things that you do and get involved with you?
You know, again, there are so many different paths to all of this, right? Mm-hmm. In our State Department, we had people who joined the Foreign Service who had spent the preceding 5 years as river guides, as stand-up comedians, as lawyers, as students, as homemakers. I mean, so we brought people in with just a tremendously diverse array of backgrounds. Mm-hmm. I would say, though, that if you know that this is something you aspire to, again, every country has their own rules about how you get in and everything else. You've got to figure out what they are and do all of that. But meanwhile, to prepare yourself to be effective, it is read broadly, read widely. I would used to tell people, read The Economist, read the New York Times, think about these issues that are out there. Ask yourself what the future holds. Open your mind to the complexity of the world. Pursue internships, sit in on seminars. I know that like the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington has, you can get on their mailing list and they do all sorts of webinars and different things. You sit in and you listen and you go away and you say, oh my God, I never thought about that. Or I didn't think about the problems in Myanmar in the same way that I never thought of it, the way that speaker was approaching it. Oh, I didn't realize that its origins lie here. And all of these things, at some point in time, you're 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, when you are a diplomat, you say, this is kind of like what that speaker was talking about. And it just, all of these things, again, it's about getting as many tools in your toolkit as you can. It's getting as much information as you can, and it's not always, it doesn't all connect right at the beginning, but as the years go on, you find how something that you learned or you heard 10 years before suddenly has relevance, and you see how this all begins to fit into a bigger picture into your understanding of the world. And I guess that's what I'm talking about. It's not, again, it's not a formulaic sort of thing, or, here are the boxes that you have to check. But we all create this body and this framework of knowledge and reference points that we can draw upon as we confront a problem. And having that experience will help you when you suddenly face a new problem. Again, the work that you do as fellows will help you to think about similar problems or even dissimilar problems, but the things that you will confront as you go forward in your life.
Great. Thank you so much for that advice. I'll definitely apply it to life as well, probably others. And would it be possible for, I guess, others to connect with you on LinkedIn? Or?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. You can connect on LinkedIn. You connect on Facebook Messenger, where I'm more than willing to do so, and I do usually respond. I try to respond if somebody sends me a message or asks me a question. I try to give them an answer. I may be slow sometimes if I get busy, but I really do try. I think it's important. It was one of the fundamental lessons I learned when we opened up Facebook, and we left the messaging function open for quite some time until it finally, we ended up having so many followers that it became impossible to keep up with it all. But I felt that as long as I had that messaging function open, if somebody messaged me, I owed them the courtesy of an answer. And it led to some really fascinating discussions too. So yeah, LinkedIn is great. I'm on there. I'm on other channels as well. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Let's get into another question. I think, Fethi, you can unmute yourself and introduce yourself and ask a question.
My name is Oguntade Feyitayomiku. I am a medical student of Olajusi University. Okay, so here in Nigeria, you always need money. Okay, and we all have passions. There are some things we really want to change, and there is actually an overwhelming list of things we want to change. Is there any financial aid given to fellows, like from the fellowship? Is there any assistance? Is there any financial aid or support given to fellows to actually carry out projects? That's my question.
I'm going to have to defer on that to Sam or somebody else.
It's good that I'm here to help answer this one. The way that the program is structured, we provide training, connections, credentials. Part of what you'll see in the fellowship later in the semester are sessions specifically tailored to fundraising, because we know how important that is, both in terms of tuition and studies, but also the projects that you're leading in community. So there'll be content specific to fundraising, securing resources later in the semester on that. But Ambassador Delisi, maybe if you have any advice generally on fundraising for projects. I know that sometimes young people come to embassies and they seek funding, and they come to others. Any advice? And obviously now you're doing it with Engage Nepal. So any advice for young leaders starting out on the fundraising front?
But it is tough. I mean, there's no question about it. When I was ambassador in Nepal, we created the first ever Youth Advisory Council, right? And this became kind of a model for the State Department to use globally. I don't know that we've done it globally, but a lot of embassies picked up on this, because we really believed that we needed to have this partnership with young people, and it needed to be more than just a partnership on paper or words. So we'd bring a diverse group of young people from across Nepal together. We'd bring them into Kathmandu periodically. And we did something similar in Uganda, especially we had President Obama had various programs for youth engagement, especially in Africa. Our Young African Leaders program and other things. And through these mechanisms, in Uganda, for example, we did fund some projects working with young people within our Youth Advisory Council, but we challenged them because we didn't have enough money to fund every project that every member of the council wanted to do. So they had to come together as a team to decide which of the projects were most deserving of funding or which had the greatest chance of success. And learning how to pitch a project, learning how to structure it, and thinking about things like accountability and transparency, and how to manage those funds effectively, and how to show your donor that you've had an impact that matters. All of this, these are part of the toolkit that you're going to need as you go forward. But where do you find it, right? And there's not an easy answer, but you will often find, you may be able to find that there are businesses, there are large companies that want to be involved in Nigeria or elsewhere and are willing to help fund youth programs. You reach out and engage some embassies and you say, well, where do I begin? Well, you do a cold call and you call and say, is there somebody, do you have a public affairs program? Do you have a development program? I'd like to come and talk to somebody and learn more about what you're doing. And I've got some ideas. And a lot of them are some of them are going to just ignore you. Some of them are going to blow you off. But sooner or later, somebody's going to say, sure, come on over. And you never know where that's going to lead. But this is hard stuff. And I have become a fundraiser to a degree, trying to become a fundraiser for the work that I do in Nepal. And boy, is that tough. It's particularly tough right now in the post-pandemic world because everybody, well, it's not even post-pandemic, but everyone is so tired of all the appeals during the heart of the pandemic that right now there's a lot of donor fatigue out there. But again, like so many other things in life, this is all about, you got to keep trying. You have to try because it's not going to just fall into your lap. You have to reach out, engage, and then engage again. And don't be discouraged when you don't get a positive response, because somewhere along the line, odds are you will, but it requires just that perseverance.
Thanks for that answer, Ambassador. I think Elijah Sir Dennis, you can unmute yourself, introduce and ask a question to the Ambassador. Elijah, are you there?
Hello?
Yeah, you're audible now.
Yeah. Good afternoon from my end. Elijah Sardenix from the Republic of Liberia. Economic major. Yeah.
I think we're having connectivity issues there.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. I have two questions which are posted, both of them. The first one has to do.
I think he has serious connectivity issues. We'll get back to him. Let's move on to another question. Samuel?
Hello?
Yeah, you're audible now. Dennis?
You get it? All right?
Yeah.
You getting me?
Yeah.
Yeah, my first question has to do, Mr. Ambassador, my question is, how can we transform those youth that are just addicted and those youth that live within the ghetto area? And in other countries, most of the African countries, West African countries, we call them a ghetto youth. And in my country, we call them a Zogo because they are formed in criminal attitude and taking in drugs. How can we transform these people to a better society? The next question. My next question is, how can the SDG part, how can the SDG part, we have to do a sustainable development goal part, how can it be implemented within a corrupt nation? For example, my nation, Liberia, is one of the corrupt nations because the past government and the present government have noticed, and for a statistic proving shows that my nation is a corrupt nation. So how can we implement the SDG 5 goals in my nation?
Right. You know, I think I got the gist of the second question. The first question, now there's so much background noise, Dennis. I wasn't able to pick it up. I don't know. I mean, did you get the first question?
I'm not clear about
Yeah,
the first question.
Yeah, Dennis, so
second-
let me do this. Let me answer the second question at least, and maybe you could type the first question and then we can come back to it. But this issue of corruption in the nation and how do you move forward with projects or addressing the SD goals when you've got such significant corruption, right? And the challenges associated with that. It's a real issue, and it's one that many of us have faced in different ways in different countries, but it's not unique to Nigeria. I have sought oftentimes, first of all, you've got to look at who your partners are going to be. If you can find what I do, for example, at Engage Nepal, I don't work with the government. I work with local communities. I keep my projects much more focused at a local level. I have partners that I know, that I trust, who are accountable, who are transparent, and we try to fly, if you will, under the radar so that we do not have a lot of government or other interference in what we are doing. It helps to have been a former ambassador too, I'll admit. We do not, I've never been asked for a bribe. I will not pay a bribe. I will not sweeten the pot. I will not put money in someone's pocket to make them feel good. And I know that's a lot easier for me to do as a former ambassador to Nepal or these other countries than it is for somebody working within their own country and trying to get things done. And this is what you got to do to get it done. But that path takes us nowhere at the end of the day. At the same time, I've had people suggest, well, it's so corrupt. There's no point. There's no point in doing this because the government is so corrupt. But then nothing changes. Nothing does get done. So to me, trying to find the avenues that allow you to have the greatest possible impact without getting caught in the web of paying people off and doing this and doing that. It's hard, but you just gotta try. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I struggle to answer this in part because there's a real difference between me talking about what I do and you as a Nigerian citizen in Nigeria, as a young Nigerian trying to do a project and make a difference in your own country. You're going to be perceived differently. You're going to be under different pressures. You're going to face different challenges. So I can understand your challenges and problems intellectually, but in an operational sense, I just don't know what you're dealing with the way that, because I don't have to deal with it. So I can say, I'm sorry that you are. These broader issues of corruption really are ones that we need to strive to change, but that's this much bigger set of issues. So it's a question of finding the right partnerships. And if you can, I will say that sometimes depending on who you are working with, I think for one of the reasons some of the young people liked to work with the American embassy, for example, was it gave them a degree of cover, if you will. They were under less pressure because people didn't want to mess around with that project that the embassy was involved in, because the embassy would fuss about some of these practices that were not otherwise acceptable. Yeah, I don't have a good answer for you. I'm sorry. I wish I did. It's tough. I know that. It's tough, but we got to try. Got to try to find the workarounds, and they are out there.
Thank you, Ambassador. We'll go to a next question from Amanda. If you could unmute and ask a question.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
you're audible.
All right. My question, my name is Amanda Mukonesho. I'm a final year audiology student at the University of Zimbabwe. So my question pertains to our individual social impact projects that will be undertaken. So with regards to controversial issues, well, here in Zimbabwe.
Amanda, could I interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
Could you try maybe coming closer to the, I don't know if others are, I'm having a little trouble hearing you. So
Can you hear me now?
that's a little better.
Okay. Let me reintroduce myself. My name is Amanda.
Come closer again. You were clear, loud for a minute, but then I lost you again.
As I was saying, my name is Amanda. Final audiology student. So my question is
Amanda, you're not audible. If you could come
Yeah,
closer.
Amanda, I'm sorry. We just can't hear you. You can send me a note and I'll try to answer your question though. All right?
all right, thank you.
Yeah,
There, heard her.
yeah, we'll go to another question from Jusufu Dolo. If you could unmute and speak. You haven't unmuted. Yeah.
Am I clear right now?
Yeah. Now you're audible.
Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you, Ambassador, for taking the time out to share your experience with us. So there is one question that I have for you. Every person that has served for 35 plus years has got some regrets. I want to know, what is your biggest regret in your 35 years of service? And why is that something that you regret to this day?
That's a fair question. It's an interesting question. I guess what I regret, there's not a big policy issue or anything else that I'd say that I regret. Couple of things that I do regret though. I regret that early in my career, I was not bold enough. I was not confident enough. I was, as I told you, I almost fell into a career in diplomacy, and I was never convinced that I belonged there. And it took me a long time to find that comfort zone. And I realized that I did not share my views as well as I could have, as clearly as I could have. I did not take the risks earlier in my career to speak out and to try to have a greater impact. And there are a lot of things that go into that. But I wish that early on, I had been bolder. I had seized more opportunities. I had put myself out there more. Yeah, I've been willing to take more chances, I guess. So be bold. Be bold, be respectful. As you're coming up, you want to be respectful. You want to listen to others. You want to appreciate the experience that others bring to the table, but don't let your inexperience become a bar to your engagement. And that's, I think I allowed that to be too much of a factor earlier in my career. And I guess the other thing that I would say, we learn how to lead over the course of our careers. And I can look back on a few instances where in working with my teams, I look back and felt I could have done better for my people. I could have guided them better. There were occasionally colleagues who had challenges in working effectively with others and being good partners. I feel like there were a few that I failed, that I could have, if only I had, and I don't know what I could have done, mind you, but I just felt that I could have found a better solution somehow to help them be more comfortable and more productive in their engagement. How we deal with the people in our lives, how we deal with our teams, how we perform as a part of a team. All of this is really important to achieving our goals, right? And so developing those skills, those people skills, those leadership skills, that thoughtfulness of working with others and helping us all to be our best, it comes with time. And I think I got better at that as time went on. But these are things that we do, that we have to strive for, and we just can't take things for granted. And especially, I will tell you that if you do rise to a significant leadership position, it is even more important that you are aware of your voice as a leader and how you are engaging your people and how you take care of them. So much depends on you, and your words matter. And this is what really strikes me. Yeah, I talk today, and I'll run into somebody that I'm worked with 15 years ago. And yeah, I used to meet with everybody when they came into the embassy and when they left, as they departed on their tour. And we would talk. And yeah, I was interested in what they were doing, what their experiences were, how they felt about it. But I never realized, I'll meet people today who'll say, Ambassador, do you remember that night? It was 20 years ago. We were standing by the so-and-so's in so-and-so's backyard having a beer, and you told me this. I don't remember what I told them, but they do. And this is the thing. This is what we've all got to be conscious of as you grow into leadership positions. For your team, for the people that you lead, your voice matters so very, very much. And words that you may not ever remember, they will. So be conscious of the words that you use. Be conscious of what you say, because it has a much, much greater impact than you think they do. Don't just say, oh, well, it's just casual conversation. I'm throwing I can throw this away. It doesn't matter. It does. When we speak, it matters. So be thoughtful about what you say and how you say it and who you say it to.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think we have to wrap up the session now due to the shortage of time and time restrictions that we have. Thank you, Ambassador, for all the insightful words that you gave and the detail in which you dealt with each question. That's really appreciable. And others who have questions, you can connect with the Ambassador via the LinkedIn account, which Sam has shared in the chat box. And thank you, Ambassador, once again for all the insightful words that you shared and all the experiences that you went through. I think this will actually inspire us, because we are a new Millennium Fellowship class and we are getting into working with Millennium and working with MCN. So I think this session has been really helpful. More than helpful, it has been inspiring to all of us. And if you have any closing remarks, you could go forward.
I would just say to you guys, you have such a tremendous opportunity. It is, again, you are a very select group. You were chosen, though. You were chosen for a reason. Yeah, this wasn't just, a name. Your name wasn't drawn out of a hat. So okay, we're going to pick Avinav and Dennis and Amanda and this and that. No, you were chosen because people saw something in you, something special live up to that potential, live up to what people saw in you. You have a chance to begin a journey. And this is one of those serendipitous things that has happened in life. Something brought you to this point. Now it's up to you. What will you do with this? And let this experience, I would say to you, please let this experience become just the start of a journey that will last a lifetime of engagement, of commitment, of service, of caring. Because not only will that be good for the world, it's good for you. And it will be, and you will not regret it when you reach the end of your journeys. So good luck to all of you. Look forward to staying in touch with some of you. And I'm honored to be with you today. And you guys are going to rock it. I know that. So congratulations.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you all.
I would also take this moment to remind everyone that we have another webinar this Friday for those interested in the role of private sector in driving social impact. You could register for that and join the webinar as well. Thank you, Ambassador, once again.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.